Good morning, everybody. The Finance Committee will come to order, please. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Are there any citizens signed up to address the committee? There appears to be none, so we'll move on to item 3, which is approval of the minutes from the August 22nd meeting. Entertaining a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Zimmerman, a second by Mr. Bose. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item 4, CFO report. Ms. Clark.
Good morning. So this morning I just want to kind of remind you that we are quickly approaching our year end of September 30th. So the finance department is really busy making sure that the books are appropriately closed. BKD will actually be out in the field in late October. They will be presenting to you the final audited financial report at our December 12th meeting. So it's a very quick turnaround for them. And we will be bringing you back preliminary year-end numbers at the October Finance Committee. The only reason that those numbers have changed in the past is because of subsequent information that we received from the state on the supplemental funding program. So DSRIP, DISH, UC, but those typically do get finalized prior to the audit. So we'll keep you posted on that information. The other year-end report that you'll be hearing either in November or December, depending on when the reporting is available and how long our agenda is our annual report from Hilltop Securities on our investments. You receive the quarterly updates via the board portal, and we'll have a representative with Hilltop actually here to spend 15 or 20 minutes giving you their annual report. Also in mid-November, we are working with both Standard & Poor's and Moody's to do our annual update for our bond ratings. Those are important meetings because we don't have much current debt outstanding. Those are done usually via phone call, and I have taken care of those for the past 4 years. So we will likely have an updated rating report by late December for those as well. So any questions on kind of the timing through the end of the year?
What our current rating is?
I don't want to get these confused. With one, it's pretty much a AA minus. We do have, or a AA, we do have an outlook rating, a negative outlook, I believe, with, I think it was with Moody's. I'm confused at the moment. But one of them did give us a negative outlook, not because of our current condition, but because of the potential large issuance of debt and what that might do to our ratios. So they're kind of on a wait and see. I believe it's fairly unusual for a rating agency to actually move you from one rating to another without a negative or a positive outlook. So they are preparing themselves for those ratios that might occur at that first debt issuance.
So would we have an opportunity to hear from them or hear from you after you talk to them about the ratio of potential debt that we may consider issuing out of the overall authorized amount and how those ratios could impact rating? I mean, the difference between 200 or 300 or 150 and how that might impact rating?
Yes, we will be discussing that on my call with them. They are not likely to give me a black and white answer because debt is just one of hundreds of factors that they actually consider as they lock down that rating. Now, both of those agencies about 2 years ago have come up with much more of an objective rating system. It's kind of points assigned for that final rating. It was a little bit more subjective before that. So if I recall the language, and those last two rating reports are on the portal, I believe still for you guys, but I can re-email them, both the Moody's and the S&P. It's only about a 3-page report, but it does note that there's the potential master facility construction plan that might come on board, and that the concern with the negative outlook is what that's going to do both to cash and to the debt ratios.
And that discussion's been going on for 10 years.
It has.
That discussion's been with us for a long time.
And-
Is it gonna be David Mednich on that call, or who's gonna be on that call?
Hilltop usually does join me on the call. David is not usually there. It's usually Laura Alexander and
okay.
Chris Janning.
Okay.
They're a little bit more hands-on with the rating agencies themselves.
I mean, from my perspective, Mr. Chairman, if we can get as much information as we can from our FAs relative to what these tranches of bond authorization look like going forward,
Yes.
if there's gonna be if there's a significant breakover point at a particular level of authorization, then that's something that could be important for us to know, because we're gonna be carrying this for a long, long time. And we're probably not gonna issue all of it for a long, long time. So kind of understanding what the FAA says about how those are gonna be, how those get approved, it would be, I think, helpful to us, because we're gonna live with a lot of interest for a while.
Right. And I do pick up the phone and call Hilltop frequently, especially as we start to talk about the size and the timing. There's a lot of logistics as we prepare for an issue. We have to do reimbursement resolution here at the Board of Manager level to be able to go back and pull in monies that we may have already spent from the time of the resolution forward. There is a certain amount of time from the issuance of the debt to the expenditure of that before we have to start paying arbitrage on those funds. So, you've got to get those projects really defined. You've got to get the cash flow assigned as best you can, and then try to time that just right.
Well, we may capitalize interest for a while. There's a lot of things that we may do. I think what becomes important to the bond rating agencies are they need to understand the amount of work that is going to understanding that financial impact on the district from the board standpoint and from the commissioner's standpoint, because all the things we're doing relative to, what is going to be the operational impact of releasing that capital and being able to mitigate that in a manner that doesn't put us in a negative financial situation. I mean, those are important disclosures in my mind.
Yes.
Because them just hearing, okay, well, JPS may be issuing $200 million worth of debt in 2020, that's a whole different ballgame than saying, here's the work that's going into understanding the operating impact of that debt and the committees and the work that's being done to make sure that that's being mitigated, because hopefully that will give them a little better impression that this is not just about going out there and issuing debt. This is also about understanding its impact and its operating implications for the district. So it's an important call, probably the most important call we've had in the last decade, I'm guessing.
They're all important. We've had, like I said, we've done this for the last three years. This will be my fourth. And all 4 calls have involved the conversation about the master facility plan. The $800 million worth of debt has been out there since I arrived. And so we have consistently had these calls. And in between calls, I just had an update call with one of the agencies last month who just wanted to know, where are you at this year? Where are we at with your bond issue? I had to explain to him, we're really in the early stages of the planning. So all of that communication continues to give them a comfort level on our current rating.
Okay.
So,
Great.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Trent.
okay. If there aren't any more questions, then I will have those 2 reports posted for you on the portal if you want to go in and look at those by end of day tomorrow.
Okay.
I think we can probably get it done today.
Great.
So I'm going to present August to you. We had a really strong inpatient admission and patient days month. We're looking at about 5% above our budget. You can see that we were a little bit lower than July, but still an incredibly busy month. From an outpatient standpoint, our emergency room, if you can focus on that, that is a 3-year high for the emergency department visits in August. They averaged about 340 patients a day. If you look at year-to-date, we were about 323 a day. So, you know, I don't think that those new treatment rooms can come on quickly enough. So, very busy. Our urgent care is down. It's about the same as it was last month. You can see that back in April, we started to kind of have a process change and patients who were directed to urgent care versus the ED based on their triage. Our primary care clinic visits, even though they show to be under budget, I do want to point out that they are much higher than last month, about 7%. We do the budget as best we can. We look at a 3-year annual trend and try to push up and down, but we had a really high budget month. You can see that tan bar in the center was one of the higher months last year, but very strong primary care visit month.
Sharon, and sorry to interrupt you, we talked about this the other day. Is there a relationship between the emergency department visits and the urgent care visits? One being up and one being down? Is there an access issue?
There is. It's not necessarily an access issue. There are several things that are going on with psychiatric, mental health care, as well as some of the patients who require a higher level of evaluation with a CT or an MRI. Some of those patients, I believe, traditionally had been seen in urgent care, and we, about midway through the year, moved those back
steering them
into
towards the ER or
the
ED.
emergency department. So there is a definite correlation there to some extent. Now, what you don't have necessarily are the relevance of the numbers. The urgent care decrease does not account for all of the increase in the emergency department. You know, they're not on the same scale. So, you know, we see about 4,000 in the urgent care. You're seeing over 10,500 in the ED. So there's still some growth in the ED even based on that change.
Okay, thank you.
Some of our other areas, invasive lab on the top right continues to be strong throughout the year. They're 3% over for this month, and for the 11 months, they are about 5.2% over. Our inpatient surgeries are very strong. You can see where they have trended from last year. This year, they're also very high. We've gotten them to 582 inpatient surgeries this month, which is about 26% higher than we expected them to be. Our outpatient surgeries are not quite where we expected them to be for the month, but trending year to date, they have been over budget as well.
Is that September historically a low month for outpatient surgeries? Because we even budgeted that it would be lower.
Well, you can see it's not historically. August, 2 years ago was very high with the gray bar. The tan bar in the center is last year, and so this year's performance is lower. It's lower than last month, and it's also lower than the prior years.
But we budgeted for it to be lower.
We did. We budgeted it to trend out. So it's kind of a shot in the dark trend on a lot of, inpatient seems to be a little bit heavier in the winter months, but when you start to look at clinic visits, it could be impacted by a physician, taking a vacation or maternity leave. And it could just be, one high volume surgeon that could impact that each
Yeah.
month.
Okay.
So for mental health, our psych inpatient days were about 4% higher than budget and on trend from last month. Our clinic visits continue to be much higher than our budgeted number. Again, that comes from also a protocol change where we started to make sure that upon discharge or evaluation that patients actually had a clinic appointment. So that drove some of that volume back into the clinic. The PEC, you can see, has kind of leveled off in August and is just under where we had expected them to be for budget. Some of our financial metrics, our days cash on hand, if you'll look at it, we always have this natural trend. We receive some of our tax dollars at the first of the calendar year. So this month, we have ended our cash on hand, which is available for operations. It excludes the JPS fund, future fund, as well as the restricted dollars. So this shows us what I have available for operations is about 185 days. Last year, we were at 181 for the same time period. So very close in maintaining that cash balance. The total days cash on hand here, this is actually a calculation that S&P would use. So if you wanted to go out and look, it includes the future fund, since it's only board designated and not truly restricted. So we have a higher number, about 235, and that is the S&P calculation. Our net AR days, I did want to point this out today. This is a big move. We are at the lowest point in 3 years in our days in AR. It is down to 45 days. You know, when we were in the 50s, we were good as an industry standard, and as we start to get it down into the lower 40s, there's been a lot of work. That is a big move, just to decrease it by a couple of days. So
That's a great number, even if we were talking about a private
Yeah.
hospital.
it
I
is.
mean, that's a comparable number with the charitable hospitals and the private hospitals.
Yeah, I wish my customers paid that quickly, yeah. And I did add, Sharon and I talked about this the other day, maybe in a future finance committee, we're gonna do a presentation on a new rev cycle steps. I think there's some real innovation there that
Awesome.
we need to
That'd
know
be great.
about.
Yeah, I think as we get ready for year end, there's a lot of success stories. We talked a little bit about it during the budget process, but we were able to realize close to $5 million this year from increased collections and just being more efficient from the very front at registration all the way through the back and contracting as well. We budgeted another $5 million on top of the current trend for the budget. So Rory and I will work on getting a PowerPoint ready for you today and to kind of show you where some of those successes have come from. And we'll sing some praises for Rev Cycle.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Good number.
It's good. You know, I've always said I will never apologize for collecting an account for services that we perform that has a payer source. And that's exactly what we're doing in some of these Rev Cycle improvements.
It's gone back to Charlie Powell when he shared this, to your work, to DT Wins and Karen Van Wagner's. And it was our effort to try to get there, and now you all are seeing the ramifications of an incredible amount of hard work. Sharon's also brought new team members in with Laura Thomas and Rory McCready. who have brought some huge benefit to us in practice. And not only is that phenomenal to get it down into the 40s, but you're dealing with a challenging patient base. These are folks that sometimes, as Amanda knows, checks and balances and checkbook accruals are tough for a population that's not used to dealing with a financial structure. So I think that the team's done really well, so I appreciate Sharon, but I also want to make sure that I let y'all know that we appreciate y'all, because you didn't go unlistened, as we constantly for the past 5 years have tried to get to these kind of points.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
There's our payer mix. It doesn't change a whole lot from month to month.
Sharon, your FTEs crept up more than normal. Is there a specific reason for that?
So our FTEs, the calculation is always done on volume, right? So there's a volume factor in there, and I think the important thing to see is that we are working at 5.53 compared to a budget of 5.72. So when we staff like an inpatient floor, when we do our fixed budget, we assume that there's going to be an average daily census on a floor of 18. For an example, well, we might have 15, we might have 20. We give them credit for a worked hour per patient day. And so our budgets are built kind of from the ground up. They're not guaranteed to be able to staff to 18. What we have to do is flex staff every day. And, you know, when you combine the flexing of staff, and it's not perfect, but hopefully if you look at it on a 2-week spread or a 4-week spread or an 11-month spread, the law of averages will continue to work out if you're correctly working on your labor productivity. So as you look at the adjusted patient day of this calculation, which is the denominator, that changes with our actual volume. So we kind of push together inpatient volume and outpatient volume, and then we come up with an adjustment factor for our FTEs that were paid. So this is total paid.
Your patient days, though, pretty much stayed the same.
Well, they're 5% higher this month. I think patient days are actually 8% higher. Admissions were 5% higher.
That means that the number would theoretically be less. I mean, the resulting
Well, no, we would staff
FTE
up. We would staff up for each patient
relative to
day.
volume, though, right?
Relative to the volume,
And
yes.
hopefully not over that.
No, we always try to staff to volume. So,
It's a bigger chunk than we've been seeing.
okay. We still look good from a budget expectation, and again, when we look at FTEs per adjusted patient day, this graph here is our year-to-date. When I look at the month, we also look at it from a monthly basis as well.
That FT number is year-to-date?
Oh, no, this is actual, I'm sorry. So the 5.53 is an 11-month look. This would be our actual FTEs at the end.
Oh, okay.
Of the month.
So your last column is what you expected it to be.
Yes, this
Okay,
is
I'm sorry.
budget.
I'm sorry, I
Yes.
misread that.
Oh, you thought that was a
Yeah, I
trend?
thought that was, I
I'm
thought that's where you were
sorry.
now.
No, we're at 5.53. So this is, I'll try to write, this is
Well,
a
that's better news.
favorable variance, yes.
Okay, good
So,
news.
yes,
Good news.
and this is prior year. So we were at 5.58. We are actually less than we were last
Yeah.
year.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Now it makes sense.
Okay.
Just be able to read would be nice.
Should have spent a little more time on that, sorry. Here's our connection enrollment. We continue to grow. We are almost at the 42,500 mark. We added about 350 enrollees during the month. For August, we had actually a little bit less favorable month. And the story for this month is simply our payer mix. We had a higher percentage of overall revenue as self-pay or connection patients. And it does not take much of a monthly shift to see a negative impact. And so the negative impact was almost $1 million of what we expect to collect for business that we saw during the month of August. If you remember, for about the last 3 months, I've told you we were having a positive payer mix. And every month that is going to vary from our fixed budget, whether it's higher or lower. So for a 1 month, that's not a big concern for me. We have continued to be about $2.4 million ahead of budget for the year. So that will fluctuate, although it was a really large fluctuation. And it was not pinpointed to a specific event. It did occur mainly in our inpatient area, which are some of our higher dollar claims in reimbursement. The other impact that we had is that, most of these variances, so some of this operating revenue, some of the supply overage, as well as this overage and other operating expenses continues to be for our 340B retail program. But when you net all of that together, that created about an $800,000 impact to our bottom line. So when you account for the new program, which was underestimated from a volume standpoint, as well as the negative payer mix, that kind of explains why we came in behind budget, but not the full $1 million. Year to date, we continue to have a very strong performance. We're about $17.5 million ahead of an operational performance than we expected to be for the 11 months. And I do suspect that we will have a positive pickup during our year-end close process as well. For September, yes. Are there any other questions for August? I'm going to skip on to a claim. A claim shows to have a negative encounters, as you can see, by about 3%. Their expectation was that some of their positions would be filled and there would be more overall visits. When I flip the page and talk to you about what happened financially, they actually came in right on budget, and that's because they're getting a higher dollar per visit in revenue. Surgery has been very strong, trauma has been very strong, and there was one other one, pediatrics. So surgery and trauma are going to be some really large visits. So from a revenue standpoint, a claim has turned out to be fine for the month. Also, they just almost hit budget. They were about $147,000 behind their budget this month. So that is, again, timing. They're still $3.1 million ahead of budget at $18.4 million for the year.
So is it fair, Sharon, to say then, to conclude that their numbers benefit from volume, exclusive of payer mix impact? So we don't necessarily get that same benefit. We see a fluctuation in payer mix like we've seen this month, and it's going to affect our net revenues. That same volume metric, when applied to a claim, doesn't produce a negative revenue implication because of payer mix. Is that right?
It is not as big of a deficit. So if you think about the payer mix chart, a claim for the most part receives payment for self-pay and for the connection program from the medical center.
Right.
So their self-pay is really kind of guaranteed
Yeah.
more at a Medicare level.
They don't have the same
They
risk
do
factor.
not
But our
have
self-pay
the
is
same
not
gap that's
guaranteed,
produced. So when we have a really high self-pay mix, then our purchase services for claims paid are also high
Yeah.
going to a claim, which is about half, and then to other providers as well. So we
I
take
think
a
the
hit
answer is
in that
yes to your
revenue.
question.
That's a really good tie back. So that's a difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp. But we do have, we pay for both the professional claims as well as take a hit on our gross on the medical center side. Then from a physician side, we pretty much maintain at least a Medicare
They get
level.
paid regardless of the payer type.
They do.
That's
yes.
the simplest form is, no matter who shows up, they're gonna get paid. We don't necessarily
don't,
benefit from
right.
that.
That's
right. And
situation.
there's a mix in that clinic, obviously, so it's not just the pure gain of it and the expenses and the cost that you have. Then the challenge that we constantly have is the facility fee that you have to, well, you don't have to put it in place, but the challenge is we have a facility fee. You take that away, it has significant impact to us, but at the same time, it discourages commercial payers for coming in. So it is the constant conundrum by which JPS lives in, and we live in that from a volume standpoint, and we live in that in the standpoint to enhance a payer mix.
And that is a critical thing you just said, because as we look forward to trying to balance the revenues necessary to support the new debt, facility fees and some of the things that discourage commercial traffic are some of the things that we've got to be in a position to look pretty hard at. And looking at what ultimately services we provide that, to use the C word, they compete.
Yes.
So if we're gonna really be serious about diversifying revenue streams and creating new opportunities to bring in money to pay for the debt we're about to issue, those two things are pretty crucial factors.
Yeah.
And I definitely think staff and board should have the fairness of debating those.
Yeah.
It's not to suggest that staff has an opinion one way or the other, but staff should be providing the board with empirical data so that the board can ultimately decide the direction at which we go on some of those crucial issues. Because your point's taken.
It's a big policy issue.
I've talked about it
It really
till I'm literally blue in the face to y'all, and y'all are probably tired of hearing it, but status quo for JPS won't work when it comes to debt
No,
retirement.
it won't.
And so it's not, we don't have to be draconian, we have to be smart. And we have to be smart about what we do, and we can't be lulled into, let's just keep doing everything we're currently doing, because we won't be able to expand our mission, and we won't be able to make a payment on a building. So I think it's incumbent upon staff to begin to push those ideas in front of you, but not suggest that those are staff's directions and this is the way you gotta go. Because we constantly get criticized, well, staff just brought us these ideas, what part did we play?
Right.
You play a critical role, because staff's role is to get all the ideas in front of you, and you say, we like A, but we don't like B. It's not ours to say exactly, you gotta go this direction.
Well, part of this is discretionary and part of it's not. I mean, to some extent, we don't have ultimate discretion over our line of services relative to being able to compete. We do have a higher level of discretion when it comes to facility fee planning.
Sure.
And as we look at commercial payer impact on our model and understand the relationship between facility fees and that revenue stream, we may have to look closely at what our facility fee model looks like, because that could bump us up
Yeah.
in terms of net revenue.
And also retaining or captivating those patients that have a Medicaid or a Medicare or government support
Absolutely.
services that are finding a real challenge in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Where we could say, we'll take, again, no disrespect to any of our colleagues,
Right.
but if you're getting reimbursed 60 cents on the dollar, and that's not a patient base you want, 60 cents on the dollar to JPS is a significant difference to 0 on the dollar. So we have to figure out where we go and how we do that, knowing that we have an environment in the not-for-profit and private world that we respect, and we respect our place as those that get 40% of their budget from a tax base. But at the same time, the knowledge that 40% is still 60% away from a perfect budget. So we got to make that gap up some way. And what I tell my colleagues very fairly is impact and challenge to JPS will significantly impact and challenge your facilities in a variety of ways. So we have to figure that incredible balance out.
DT?
I believe on the JPS connection, I'll come back to it, is the ones that if we focus on their cost and really look at that and make sure that on the utilization, it's the one that we really should be able to drive. That is the one that we're paying everybody for. And so I do understand needing increased streams and all of that, but I think if you control that first, that's a good point to start, because that is the main one that we should be looking at. And that's one of the reasons I keep coming back, and I think next month we'll be getting some of those cost data. Is that when you plan on?
Well, I think
Bring
what
it.
we had talked about during the budget presentation is once the software schedule is set, we'll be bringing back a calendar of critical dates and milestones.
I don't know if that's what my understanding of it was, but if those critical dates and milestones is saying, here's when I'm gonna start getting some of that data. Because I don't think we can do a lot on controlling our costs and looking at our destiny until you are really able to understand everything. When you talk to me about we need to change services, if we don't have that, I don't think you can do it.
Dorothy, your point is not a necessary situation that you've kept saying it because we believe in that too. If you've got 43,000 people that you're providing services to, you have a controlled audience by which you can get immeasurable amount of information from a utilization standpoint in services provided. So I think staff-wise, we're very much not only hearing that, I agree with you 100%. That's an audience that we've got to figure out how we best provide services, what kind of services we are providing, and I think that's the future of JPS. And it hasn't necessarily been the past of JPS, but it will definitely be the future of
I
JPS.
think when we look at the ER and all the visits and everything that's going over there, I don't know how many of those are JPS connection. How many of those are our frequent flyers? That is the information. If we're gonna address costs, we have to have it.
Totally agree.
This is what I'm looking for, because, when I look at this one, right, there's many ways to defend this, but I can't, because I don't know what's the cost of pharmacy, what's the cost of post-acute care. I don't understand what's the cost of home health. And then, then at the end of the day, you're gonna be looking at what's the discrepancy between best practice and what's actually being provided to the patient. And then we can just follow where the quality goes, right? When we don't compete in the next wave of remaking the organization, patient will come to us, healthy patient will come to us as they see our result. So I want to get rid of all that competition. It is how we manage the life of the patient, general life and all that stuff. What's the potential cost avoidance and all that stuff? It is very, very hard when I look at this. And I can't say a physician, I know they're doing a great job. I can't say they're doing a great job because they defer this. They intervene at the appropriate time when they send to the specialist and all that stuff. Those are what we were looking for our population, and I can't see that from the financial.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to get to a point where I think in the past, we've always been a board that's pretty much said, look, the numbers are the numbers, and we kind of deal with the numbers. The commissioners' meeting last week was illuminating to me in terms of what they see going forward and their expectations, particularly as it relates to cost, and that was reiterated a couple of times. I want to make sure that we have, as a board, have really sort of encouraged and challenged the staff with help us drill down into these numbers so that we can understand what policy changes could be implemented that helps help move those numbers toward us and helps change that dial. And I think there's not been a real need in the past maybe to do that based on our costs, but I think there's going to be a critical need going forward because I think some of the expectations of our capital relative to the cost of operating that capital are still a major issue for JPS. I think every time we get the opportunity to drill down, we probably need to be drilling down, yeah.
I agree.
Changes completely.
Okay, we'll begin working on that. Did you have a question? Sure.
I'm gonna start working on that, and your software data, when do you think that you will first start being able to deliver a report?
So if you're looking for volumes of connection patients or specific to just hospital costs, we can start to prepare a presentation from that information. When you start looking more into the population health side and outcomes data, that's what the software that we approved during the budget will start to report on.
I kind of first would like to see your inpatient data, that cost data, because based on what that is, when you start looking at population, then you're looking at early screening, what are we doing there? So I think we have to have the cost of what we're paying out now, and then we can move into the population.
We do have the cost information now, especially for inpatient. We're still working on how to bring the pharmacy information over, as we had discussed.
Okay.
The physician information and the physician network is phase 2 of cost accounting. So a claim is not fully costed at the moment. We
But we
do
are
have
paying
the
them a
claim
cost.
information that we pay to a claim from the medical center side. So
So-
there are components that I can begin working with and bringing cost information. I think for the first probably 3 to 6 presentations, there may be more questions than answers from some of that data, and
Right.
that's okay. So, yeah, we'll begin working on that.
So I just want to have a date. I mean, we keep saying it's going to come, and I'd just like to have you to give me a time frame, your time frame, if it's 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, just give me a date, because it's coming. It's been coming ever since I've been on this. Well, that's not ever since I've been on the board, but every time we get a new system, it was coming. So I would just like for you to tell me what is your best estimate that you will first start.
So an estimate for thinking through it here on the spot, Dorothy, would be, I would appreciate an opportunity to get this year closed. So we're gonna be closing this year, 9/30. It takes a while to cost the data, so probably by December, we would be able to cost the data. And I would like a couple of months to be able to prepare a meaningful presentation of that costing for you.
Okay, so that'll be March.
So that would be March.
Okay, all right. I
Yes,
just wanted
ma'am.
the date. And I know that we don't normally have that stuff in our minutes, but I'd like to have that, some of our milestone, this date somewhere, because I think it's important. We must start, and so
I
I
will
think
make
March would
sure
be it.
that we
Okay.
will have costing information for the connection patients in the draft of the minutes that you will see from this
You might
meeting.
want to do a connection, and I know self-pay is going to be somewhere in there.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Let me ask a question. When you said costing, is that costing is the general area, or is that going to be something that is kind of specific for us to look at? Because I'm very concerned about is getting the data, and then we come back and say, oh, we didn't attribute it correctly to the right primary care or to the right specialist and
So,
stuff like
so
that.
you are probably the next expert at costing other than my staff on the board. And we have costed the entire medical center expenses across on a per patient level. It's fairly detailed. It's not, it is
But do they-
based on which physician and which floor or
Right, but-
which
But do
clinic.
they know down to the level where sometimes you can have two primary, kind of look like two primary care, but they're not really primary care? And
So
then
what
they-
we will have
And then-
is just dollars paid out of medical services reimbursement at the patient level. So we'll have dollars. When you start talking about outcomes and what levels they're actually seen at, I think that's a much deeper dive.
Right, because I was trying to make it a dual use of that data also as well, right? Because you can apply that backwards so that you can challenge the insurance company as you move toward value-based type thing. Because the attribution, and then when they go to a specialist, when they get a second opinion and all that stuff, if it doesn't get it correctly, you can't grab that revenue back into your bucket. It will go somewhere else. And that will be potential revenue leakage and all that stuff. That's why I want to make sure that as we go down that path, let's do it one time and lay out the pipe correctly so that you can get to that information. Otherwise, it'll be too late to be looking at that. And also all the way down to the gaming of the post-acute care and home health.
All the way down
also.
to the what?
The post-acute care and home health also as well, because
Okay.
you got to be able to look at the primary care physician and then the certification of the home health so that you can stop the low yield care. Let's put it that way, because I don't want to raise the word fraud, abuse, and all that stuff, because you will never get anybody to participate and collaborate with you. But as you approach high yield care and low yield care, then you can start recognizing the patterns and start putting some
So
pressure on them.
again, for the first round, I will be able to bring you costing. So if it got paid out of the medical center, which home health does, or a SNF gets paid out as a purchase service, or any kind of outside medical service, that is included in the costing of the medical center. As you start to look at how effective those costs are, that's going to be in the second wave when we start to look at outcome data.
So we will be able to see sniff and swing bed and all that stuff? if we
I
need to?
don't know the answer to that because we haven't gotten the software in place. But I know Dr. Hochberg is leading that, and I'll work with him. And again, I think that, you know, for the first 3 or 4 times we talk about this, it's going to create more questions than answers, and that's okay. So we'll just have to drill down. It's not gonna be the full picture as you described it just now. The first pass will not.
Right. I'm just raising questions so that, make sure that, so that as you coordinate with IT, the data aggregation is so important, right?
Yes.
Because when they slip through that, you guys can only see things that are already there, and it may not be correct at all.
So with the
and
new software, the cost accounting data that we have will actually be uploaded into that to marry it out with the outcomes. So I don't know if that helps or not. Okay.
So I have a question, just a context type of question. And the transition of the new software, were you doing this kind of reporting before with the old software?
No, there's not really any old software. So we've just developed the cost accounting system, and we're still working on allocation of total expenses down to the patient level. It's a complex process that you have to go through to do that. The newer software that we were talking about during the budget process would actually help manage the care of the connection population and determine outcomes based on preventative care, the effectiveness of cost, where they're receiving care, did they get the right care at the right place at the right time, maybe overutilization of specialists that maybe could be done at a primary care setting. So all of those other utilization factors will be easier to look at using the second, what I'm calling the second phase. The first phase is truly an accounting of the costs that have been, you know, some of these costs that have been expended, this 913 million plus the additional month's worth of activity.
Thank you. And how long have we been using this new software?
The cost accounting was purchased about 2 years ago, and we've been stepping it down ever since. And I do believe that we have great costing information. We've been using it internally for about the last probably 8 to 9 months, where we can start to make some decisions on where are some of the costs that are higher. Benchmarking is always good and bad. It takes a long time to make it through why we might be different or why we might not be different. So we've been able to pull certain information out of that for quite a while.
So is there any reporting that you feel comfortable in sharing from that internal data?
I believe that's what we
That's
are talking about, that will be coming back to you in
Okay.
March.
Okay. Okay, so nothing immediate?
No, I would
Gotcha.
like to be able to close our year and then work through and make sure everything is costed out, and then we can spend a couple of months getting that PowerPoint ready for you. All right?
If it would help, when you start pulling that together,
Mhm.
I'll be glad to come in so you can get my questions.
Yeah.
Sometime they help you do the report.
Okay.
So you can see some of those things as you're doing it. I'll be glad, and I'll volunteer to teach.
Well, I don't, I will bounce that off of some folks, but I don't know, based on the new information that we got a couple of months ago, I don't know if a bigger group discussion is better, and that's why I'm saying it, I think now that we don't meet with you guys individually as much, that my expectation is going to be the first time is more of a discussion, and then we'll bring it back again, and the group can have a further discussion, and we'll bring it back again.
I may be out of school here, but I don't think this is a function of finance and waiting for the finance department to produce. I think this is a function that should be led by community or by the physician group with the
And-
data
and-
available, and then come back and tie that with financial as needed. Because-
And if I've misspoken, the costing information is definitely an accounting function, and that's what my part is. We have costed the patient information. The costing information will be uploaded to
But
the-
your costing is tied to your Epic system, if I'm not mistaken. That's not where it started. The costing tied to the Epic system.
Yes, Epic captures all of our patient
But
data.
you should follow the data coming from the insurance company, because that's where all your total revenue coming from.
So we do balance back. Part of Epic is our billing system.
You don't see
and-
the whole 360 view of the patient. You don't have that information coming from because unless you
There are more feeds
unless this is a
from-
closed system, like a Kaiser Permanente or something, you don't. You just can't.
We do have a couple other systems, and I don't mean to talk over Sharon, but we have, as she was talking, we have several.
David, come on up to the podium so that anybody live streaming can hear your words of wisdom.
But, yeah, so there are several other systems that we're pulling data from for what Sharon's talking about with the new software, and it's not just from Epic, right? Because there is claims data that goes in and out from our payers, and there are claims data that comes in that handles just for the connections patients for the dollars that are going in and out of a claim for those patients. So when she's talking about, the complexity of this, it's not one feed, and it's not just Epic that is doing it. From Sharon's perspective, we couldn't have this conversation 8 years ago because we didn't have a cost accounting system to even know where our costs were going. And it's just been within the last 2-3 years underneath her leadership that we've been able to say, okay, now we understand, right? And now we know where all the costs are going and all the finances are going, and we've been able to really straighten all that out. Now we can use that data in alliance with the Epic data, as well as all the claims data that's coming in and out of us. Now we can marry all that to be able to drill down to the data that you're seeing. And previously, and I'm just speaking that something Robert's probably going to fire me for, but previous to that, we just didn't really have that leadership to know all of that and where all the ins and outs were. And when we tried similar systems like Crimson and so on and so forth 7 years ago,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that we just did not have the thought process down let alone the data aggregation levels to be able to say, this is what the board needs, this is the financial leadership to be able to get there. Now we're at a point that we have all of those things in place, so now we can actually make some sense out of the data. So if that makes sense. But yeah, there are multiple feeds, and it's the claims data that's gonna be coming to us from those outside providers that we're really gonna be doing so we can understand what our costs are internally as well as the outside that are gonna be required from us. There's still some speculation.
I'll disagree.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way. Because I think you're digging something too deep that you won't be able to get your answer.
Okay.
It's the cost accounting and all that stuff is to be used to take the false positive out, but you should take it from the attribution coming from the insurance company. And from there, because everybody's looking at it from internally and they all failed miserably. Other health system did. You need to take it from, that's why a lot of people goes in from the claims system of the insurance company. Because you got everything that you really need, because otherwise they don't pay, right? You have to justify all that stuff, the coordination, all that stuff.
Right.
You bring that in and then you tie that with your lab system, your EMR and all that stuff. And some, the other stuff to bring it. But that's when you get crossover with the case management system and the care management system, where we're looking for the financial impact and all that stuff, that doesn't have to go down that path that we don't have to wait that long for. That's what I'm.
Right. So I agree with what you're saying on that. So I think probably what Sharon and I and Sharon and Dr. Hochberg have been spearheading this with myself. So I think probably what we'll do is we'll look at the schema of where all these fees are coming in. And when she does her presentation about where these costs are, I think we need to overlay that with where the data is coming from, where we're pulling it from, how we're trying to do the aggregation and attribution of those claims. And like Sharon said, I think it was very well put. That's a starting point, and then as you guys start drilling through your questions, then we'll start figuring out where some of these other things go, and use some of the expertise that's already on the board with everyone here to figure out what's the dollars that we're trying to really get to, and I think that's where we can partner up and make that work.
Okay. So last point I wanted to make is just that, again, way over here on the total column on the right, you can see that our income from operations on a consolidated basis is about $6.5 million compared to a loss position that we really thought we would be in during that budget process of close to 14 million. So it's been a strong financial year compared to our budget. And if you recall, our budget 2020 puts us in a really good place for next year as well. So that was all of my prepared comments for the financials, unless someone else has some questions.
Any questions for Sharon on the
Okay.
August? I'll entertain a motion to accept her report. Motion by Dr. Weber, seconded by Mr. Nguyen. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Ms. Walker, item 5B. Morning, Pia.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you all for allowing for me to present to you all this morning the contract on B. Smith Services. This morning, I would like to ask for your approval for this contract. The total cost is $793,000, which is in our approved budget. The total estimated amount will be 1.5. This contract is for when we do interim leadership as well as executive leadership. And we did also post this as an RFP for other agencies for this type of service. So at this time, I would like to ask for your approval of this contract with B.E. Smith.
So Pia, I had just a couple of real simple questions, and I didn't bring my book with me, I'm sorry. So for the 793, is that certain number of searches we think are going to occur, or just based on
Certain number
historical?
that we
sort of-
possibly estimate. So, of course, when you're recruiting for leadership and executive level roles, it's going to be at a higher cost.
Sure.
What occurs is that anytime when we place for interim is not paid until the person is placed. When it's for executive leadership, what occurs with that, usually what you find out in the industry is that usually it's a 3-payment process that occurs. They do ask for an upfront fee because that's the cost of their
Of going and
recruitment,
doing it, right.
advertisement, and of course, the second payment is usually for them just their work and their process in helping to get the person placed. And we do not pay the final payment until the actual individual is
Right,
placed into
okay.
the role.
And is it a percentage typically of the salary?
Of
or
the
is it-
salary,
okay.
it's a percentage typically of
And
the person's
historical,
salary.
just our experience has been, that's about 800,000 a
Okay.
year is what?
It could be less, but based upon what we paid previously, that's what we base the number on.
Okay.
So for the upcoming year, it could be lesser than that based upon our return and then the attrition that we occur in the organization as well.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. And this is not physicians, this is executive
This
leadership?
is
or-
leadership, this is our roles that consist of director and above, and then for executive, VP and above too
But
as
how
well.
many of those a year would you say there are just overall within that
Oh, wow, guesstimation,
rough order of magnitude?
I could say it could probably be about 10, 15
Okay,
at minimum, yeah.
okay.
Because some of our positions, we place successfully on our own, with our own talent management team, and then there could be a possibility of the harder to recruit roles that we do work with B.E. Smith. So we do go through a process of identifying and allowing for our own talent management team to work the
Right,
process.
so this is not exclusive, we can use
Right.
them or others
Right, we
depending on
can
the
use
source.
this, or we can use our own talent management services too, as well.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Is there any warranty, guarantee from them?
Say that
Is
again,
there
I'm
any
sorry.
guarantee from them for
Yes, so
successful
on
candidate or the
what we did
replaces?
with B.E. Smith is that the guarantee with this is that if the person does not stay in the job for a year, what they do, they give us a reduced cost if we have to recruit for that job within a year again. And so it could be 50% of the cost that they guarantee for us.
Okay.
But B.E. Smith is a year. Some agencies is 6 months, so it all depends upon what is in that clause for recruitment services. So it varies per agency.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Does that preclude them from recruiting the people they place if several years out and then they take that same person somewhere else?
You
Do
know,
you
I
have
have
anything
never
for
had
protection?
that to occur
I've seen it
in my
before.
history, but what occurs is that anytime when we go through these, we do look at previous individuals that have sat in the role so that we're not bringing them back in, or if it wasn't a good hire for the organization as well. So we do have our parameters that we look at when we're working with the agencies to do this placement.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Amanda, you had a question?
I do, I have a couple of questions, some just educational and context questions for these types of contracts. In looking at their leadership team and their executive leadership team, it doesn't seem that they're very inclusive. So what is their ratio of minority applicants to minority hiring? Is that something that is looked at when you receive the RFP? Is that a question that's on that RFP?
For the applicants? Well, of course, we recruit for the best qualified applicant for the positions. Looking at us as an organization, since we do focus on diversity, that is something that, if we need to focus on diversity recruitment for a job, that is something that we have to coach the agency on as well. So those transparent conversations, if that needs to occur, it can occur. And so we have absolutely no issue with B.E. Smith because we have made that relationship with them if we need to focus on doing that for recruitment for those jobs. So that can occur, and if it needs to occur, we do have that conversation with them.
And what is, oh, sorry.
I was going to ask you a question, Amanda, because that may be a policy issue that we have not ever delved into.
Yeah.
And that is, it may be a policy issue we've never discussed. We have our own internal MWBE policies that we have to adhere to, and our bidders and our proposals and all have to fill out the forms to tell us whether or not they comply with their internal policies. If I'm understanding you correctly, what you're
Correct.
saying is, have we taken that policy forward to say, one of the criteria that we want to see in the firms that are going out there and trying to, locate folks for us to come work here is the diversity component among their pool of applicants? And are they giving us pools of applicants that reflect the kind of
Correct.
diversity that internally we're seeking to get? Is that right?
Correct.
Because that's a great idea, frankly. I mean, that's something I've never even contemplated whether or not we've done that, but that's an interesting
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah, and that was just the context, and now I know that, I didn't know if there was a previous relationship with this particular company,
Previous
or
relationship,
or
we've
what?
had an
Okay.
ongoing relationship. So I've been with the organization for the last 7 years, and I know that we've had this for the last 6 years with B.E. Smith. Yes.
Yeah, it's just within, and I guess this is more towards HR than anything else. In looking at those particular practices, we know that the number of applicants that come in from minorities aren't always the ones that get to the recruiter at the final stages with the company. So if that is something that is within the RFP, something that we can look at later on as we move forward with other contracts,
Absolutely.
then I think that that's something that we need to be able to place in.
That makes sense.
For Ms. Walker. I'll entertain a motion for approval of item B, 5B.
Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Bose, second by Dr. Schrader. Wow, Chet has spoken. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Pia. Dr. Duncan, item C.
Good morning. So I
Good
come
morning.
before you today to ask your approval for the purchase of Savvy Scout, which is a wire-free radar localization system that allows our surgeons to precisely locate and target tissue in the breast for removal. Although Savvy Scout is fairly new technology, it's become a standard of care for top breast programs across the country. And so as we look to improve the quality of care that we provide and our patient experience, we see this as being a win-win for us. Currently, just to review with everyone, currently, if a patient is requiring a biopsy or a lumpectomy, it requires us to schedule 2 procedures on the same day in 2 different locations. The first procedure is done at our Health Center for Women, Maine in our mammography suite. It is a needle localization procedure by which the patient, a needle is placed at to locate the tissue. A portion of that needle actually remains projected from the breast. Cup is placed on it, a gown is placed on the patient, and then the patient is transported to our OR. So you can see that just the complexity of scheduling that and the ongoing discomfort until the OR procedure takes place, that there should be a better procedure for that requires a lot of complexity. What Savvy Scout allows us to do is to actually schedule that first procedure up to 30 days prior to the procedure. It is a wireless, non-radioactive implant that is placed at the point at which the tissue needs to be removed. We can then send that patient home and then schedule their surgery, and that works both for the patient, it's convenience for the patient, and for the surgeon. And it is FDA approved, and I am asking for approval of the purchase of that. Sienna Medical is the only vendor that offers this technology, and so I'm also asking sole source agreement approval.
Any questions for Dr. Duncan on this? So the motion on this does need to be 2-part, one for the sole source and one for the approval of the request. Your motion contains both components. You heard it here first.
What did you say?
I'd be happy to dance on the grave of needle localized.
Well, we're going to let you do that. Once you approve this, we're going to be
Can you-
closer to that.
One-legged man dance.
One-legged man dance. We'll include that in the minutes. So we have a motion. Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Zimmerman. All in favor? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Ms. Ball. Item 5D. Most of these next 2 items are actually revenue items, correct?
Correct. Good morning. I'm pleased to present you with two contracts. The first contract is for adult and adolescent crisis services. This is a contract with MHMR of Tarrant County. They pay us to compensate for the large volume of indigent patients that come to TSP. It doesn't cover all of our expenses, but it certainly helps with those expenses that we incur. This also covers for a program that we have with MHMR of $106,000. So it's for jail inmates that have a mental health condition and can have an early release with conditions, and they're able to come to our partial hospitalization program, so it helps compensate for those expenses. And then also, MHMR reimburses us for a nurse salary that focuses strictly on the jail inmates that have a mental health issue to monitor their physical health as well as their medication compliance for their mental health needs. The total of the contract is $2.386236 million.
Okay, any questions for Zelia on this item? I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Dr. Weber, second by Ms. DeBose. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Zelia. Item E.
So a second
Yeah.
contract, again, is with MHMR of Tarrant County. So for those of you that are new on the board, we have 28 beds that we operate. It's called Trinity Springs North, and that is for patients in Tarrant County that have been committed to the state hospital, and in lieu of going to the state hospital, they go to Trinity Springs North, and our average length of stay there is about 42 to 45 days. And so that allows us to be able to keep Tarrant County residents local and to be able to engage their families for their treatment as well. This contract is, MHMR acts as a pass-through agency for the state. And so this contract is for $5.7+ million to cover our costs regarding the operations of those 28 beds. This does not cover all of our costs, but it certainly makes a significant dent in our costs, and it provides a much-needed service for Tarrant County residents.
Okay, any questions for Zelia on this? We have a motion by Mr. Bose, second by Ms. Arizola. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you,
Zelia.
everybody.
Any report from council?
We had, for the month of August, we had 48 contracts that were negotiated under 500,000.
48?
And those are in the portal.
Any questions for council on any of that? We have no items enclosed, therefore we are adjourned.